work on, I need to, because I'm a lifetime learner, I need to continue with this. But as I went to my administrators and was talking with a mentor, I'm a little shocked that people saw this in me that I didn't see in myself. So I'm excited about what's to come.
All right. Thank you, Krista. Kiba, are you able to speak through your audio now?
I think so.
Yay. Yes. Go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Kiba Robinson. I currently teach at Enarberger Middle School in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, but I currently reside in Laurel, Mississippi. I've been teaching Mississippi Studies and U.S. History for 8th grade about 5 years now. I did teach at the elementary level PE, and I wish I could go back to PE because middle school, the attitudes is on 10. But I enjoy it, and I've never wanted to be a teacher, but it kind of chose me. My family, I come from a long line of educators and social workers, and my dad kind of pushed me to become an educator, but I started out in sports and recreation. I have several degrees in sports and recreation. I have my master's in sports administration, and I started out in that. And then me and my dad had a conversation about, you still can be around kids and sports if you teach. So he kind of pushed me towards it. So I started my journey in that, and I love it. I did decide to become a principal because the classroom just wasn't for me. I enjoy it, but it's not something that I want to continue to do as a lifelong career. So that's why I decided to pursue my specialist in educational leadership. I don't know who hasn't went yet. I've been having some trouble, so I don't know who hasn't went.
Okay, so Jamal just added to the class. So Jamal, if you would turn your camera on first, and then if you would introduce yourself and just give us a little background.
Apologize. My name is Jamal Elkins. I'm located in Jackson. I teach Algebra 1 for JPS. I'm currently in the educational leadership, again, trying to get my specialist. I just recently got my MED from William Carey. I do also have a master's in mathematics and a BS in math. I think that's about it. Nothing else.
Okay, I know this takes up a lot of time, but one thing you'll learn in education, and you probably already have learned it, is you always build a network of people. I'm going to introduce myself. I am Dr. Nicole Cockrell. I finished my doctoral degree in April of this year and graduated from William Carey in August. I knew I wanted to be a teacher my entire life, even though I went down different paths. You run from your actual destination sometimes. I have been a teacher, an interventionist in JPS, a literacy specialist in Madison, same job, different titles. I've been an assistant principal for the last 6 years. I have just been named the principal of the school that I've been the assistant principal at for these former years. And I'm excited and terrified at the same time. I tell people I have a brown bag for breathing in, and I have the hospital puke bag for vomiting in. So whichever day it's going to be, that's what I'm going to pull that bag out for. What I will say is I've served in the assistant principal role is the best role. I'll tell anybody that is just the best role. You get to be the nice person, the mean person, the kids love you, the parents love you, the kids hate you, the parents hate you. You go up and down. It's like a roller coaster ride that you enjoy for the rest of that time. I will say, this course, I've taught it now. You guys would be my fourth cohort to teach, third cohort to teach. This course does give a lot of information. It tells you about the different hats you'll wear. My principal and I have always made the joke at the end of the day, hey, were you a firefighter or a porta potty today? Because that's pretty much where you kind of go back and forth, but you want to always land in the middle as an instructional leader, because that is our role. We're no longer managers. We're no longer, I used to love when I was doing my master's degree for ed leadership. I did it at Mississippi College. And one of the professors would always say, as an assistant principal, you got the 3 B's: butts, buses, and books. Well, books are gone. Everything's now on a computer, right? I know a lot of high schools still use a lot of textbooks, but in elementary, most of our things are on the computer or it's a consumable book. So that is pretty much off the table. Buses are a lifetime. You'll never get rid of the buses. And butts, you'll never get rid of butts, because kids are going to be kids and they're going to do things impulsively. Some do them intentionally, but kids are going to be kids. But at the same time, your role is going to change. If you're in an assistant principal role, you're going to do a lot of discipline. You're going to deal with the buses, but your ultimate goal every day is to be an instructional leader. If you have not purchased the book, this book is your lifeline for this class. You will need this book. There isn't a way to wing it without the book. I've read it cover to cover, so I know if you're filibustering me. I will tell you that. I know the book chapter by chapter, domain by domain, because again, y'all are the 3rd cohort, so I've gone through it 3 times now. The other part of this course is we're going to do a couple of different things this morning. I am a teacher by nature, so I do have notes. I try to make sure I'm prepared for you all when you get here. How many of you all are struggling with the Canvas module itself, like going through the modules, finding information, that sort of thing? No one? Oh, that's great. That means you all are used to using Canvas more so than the last cohorts. And I blame COVID for that. And I thank COVID for that mostly. But with this course, we're going to talk about being an instructional leader. What does that look like? Most people in an education field or in a classroom or in a building period know that you will analyze and look at data. Today, I'm going to give you a few minutes to break off in groups. I'll put you in different breakout rooms in just a few minutes, and I'll give you a sample set of data. You will have that data project to complete, and it's due end of June. No, it's due July 2nd, I believe. And you will have to do that as a group. I always like to start this course off telling you guys group activities are a requirement. You can't opt out and say, well, I don't like my group, I'm just going to work it myself. You will not get full credit for that assignment if you break off on your own and send me a document that doesn't look like your group document. I will not grade it. You will get a 0. I like to tell people up front, because the one thing I don't want you to walk away and say, well, she never said that, or I didn't know. This course is being recorded. I forgot to turn it on at the beginning, but I did catch it at some point, so that people who are unable to attend it can go back and view it. Or for those of you who say, oh, I forgot that, let me go back and see, can I see if that was said? If you look at the different modules, I do upload an instructor video, and it does have the wrong dates because I did that video back in the fall. I want you to pay attention to the content, because the content didn't change from course, from trimester to trimester. It's the same content, the same expectations. I've gotten off script. Let me go back to make sure I'm not skipping anything. Okay, so those of you all that have the mentor agreement forms, please don't forget that that is going to be due. And I tell you, I always caution students to go ahead and get that signed, because you have to get it signed by your superintendent. And that's probably the hardest person to get it signed by. And sometimes it's the easiest person. It just depends on how big your district is. But go ahead and get that done. You have to shadow elementary and you have to shadow secondary. So making sure you get those 2 people to agree to do that, because you cannot do your clinical practice hours without that form. And it has to be signed by 2 people. Dr. Sellers will go into detail with you guys in your orientation today more about that. But that's just something I want to remind you all to do. I'm gonna be honest with you about graded papers. Some weeks I'm better than others at graded papers. The summers are a little bit harder because of all the different things that everyone's doing. I do understand that life happens. Everyone said about their kids. I am the parent. I'm in 3 different worlds, I feel like, as a parent. Well, 2 now, because both are young adults. I have a 25-year-old son, a 20-year-old son, and a 15-year-old daughter. The 25-year-old lives in Virginia, so he doesn't require a lot of my time. The 20-year-old is still here, and he's going out into the workforce shortly. He starts orientation here in a few weeks. And then the 15-year-old is what she calls herself a cheer leader. And that's what she does. So we do competitive cheer, we do high school cheer. That pretty much takes up my weekends and every day thereafter. So those of you with littles going through this program, I commend you. I did a lot of it when my kids were at midpoint of life, middle and high school, and then the baby girl. And it is better, I think, and sometimes not so much. Just ebbs and flows with what's going on. So with that being said, I understand that life happens. I know someone's on in the mountains for a wedding. Someone has a funeral to attend. Saturdays are very busy. As long as you email me ahead of time to let me know what's going on in your life, I'm very understanding, because I do believe family first. And I say that to my teachers: you put God first, your family's next, and then everything else falls after that. So if things are going on, just shoot me an email. I do understand. However, with that being said, I do understand that something doesn't happen every week, y'all. Let's just be honest. Sometimes it's prioritizing time, and things don't happen every week. Somebody doesn't die, and every week there isn't an emergency. And like her, I was at a wedding. My brother-in-law got married, and I did my Zoom call in the Airbnb with my last class last trimester, because life does happen, but we have to prioritize time as well. I've done Zoom calls at the beach because my daughter had a cheer competition. Life happens. My husband had to take her to the competition, and I met them, right after I was done with my Zoom, because again, life happens, but we have to pivot, which is the term that came out of COVID. We pivot and we're flexible because we're educators, and we know we could be in the middle of the best lesson ever and the fire alarm goes off and we go into a fire drill, right? That's who we are as humans. We know how to pivot. So just being aware of deadlines, assignments are due on Sunday at 11:59 and 59 seconds. At 12 o'clock, they're late. Okay. And I do take points for late assignments. I don't try to kill your grade because it's late. Even with an email, you still will lose points. But that is what I used to tell my boys as they were growing up, is cost benefit analysis, right? If I have a beach trip and that's the most important thing for me, I'm going to take my points loss, because I'm going to the beach and I'm not opening my computer. It's that type of cost benefit analysis. Okay. And you make those determinations. But what I will say, an email before it's late helps your grade more so than an email after it's late. Okay. So just take that into consideration as we go through. I try not to get too far behind with grading a week at a time. I know you're graded your papers from this past Sunday. You'll have those grades in by the end, before 11:59, 59 seconds on this Sunday. Some days I do get behind. It just depends on, again, life happening. If you're concerned about something, shoot me an email. You'll see a lot of my responses. It says sent from my iPhone, because if I see it on my phone, I'm going to try to go ahead and respond to you in that moment, because I know feedback is very important. Timely feedback is very important. So any concerns or questions you have, please don't hesitate to email. I've always said to students when I was in the classroom, the only dumb question is the question that's not asked. And that's just the way life is. Because what's a question for you may also be a question for someone else. So don't ever think about whether or not you should ask. Just send that email and I'll respond. Now, let's get into the meat of this class. Are there any questions before we go ahead and get started? No. Okay, so when I comment on your writing, I am very big about the text boxes within the document. So you'll see my comments in your document, because I like to highlight what we're talking about, whether it's a text citation or anything like that. When you are doing your domain responses, let me go ahead and tell you, you didn't write the book. You know, Marzano and Carbo wrote this book. So at the end of every paragraph, you need to have a citation, because that's not your writing. That belongs to the authors of the book. And those of you who are going into your dissertation after this is important to know, because they'll send it back to you all chopped up because you didn't do any citations at the end of the paragraph. And the reason I said the end of the paragraph, because you're paraphrasing. You're going in and making it your own, but you still pull that information from the book. So direct citations, don't get in a habit of quoting these authors every time, because it will make your Turnitin score rise. Keep your Turnitin score below 14% and below at the best that you can. On those group projects, it's gonna shoot up high because 4 of you all have posted the exact same thing, right? So I don't look at the Turnitin score as much for those things, but your domain assignments I do, because then you are into the point of plagiarism. So be cautious about that. Let me see, can I share my screen without messing all of the things up? Okay, let me, bear with me. We are gonna go through a quick slideshow. Just on the domains. All right, we got new MacBooks this year, and so now I have to give all kinds of permissions in order to share my screen. It's the way this new system is working. All right, here we go. All right, can you see my screen? Thank you. Got lots of text boxes I'm going to get rid of. All right, so this is just going to be a quick preview of the roles of the principal. And it's just one of those things that we need to go through just so you all have an understanding. Every time we do our Zoom call, we will do a quick little checkup on our domains, for lack of another way of saying it. So, roles of the principal. I'm not going to read to you all because you're intelligent educators, but I will pause on some of the screens to go through it. Just so you know, if you have not looked at the PCL standards, that's something you need to become familiar with, because that is going to be a part of your day-to-day life as an administrator. This course, going through this course and this book, is going to help you improve your practice. And that's basically what everyone wants to do. That's why we do continuing education, is to improve our practices. It will talk to us about the balance between an instructional and an organizational leader, because both are together, tied together. And I've always said, as an administrator, your focus is on instructional parts, but you can't let the building fall apart. So you have to do the organizational part as well. The book gives so much specific knowledge. So if you don't have the book, go ahead and get it. And if you have not started reading it, please start reading it, because it's very important information. All right, objectives of the model. I'll let you guys just peruse through that. And it always goes back through being an instructional and organizational leader, because that's the role, once you become an administrator, that you go back and forth with often. Looking at diversity, inclusiveness, and equal opportunities for each student. That's going to be something as an administrator you constantly are going back through. And my favorite part is core values, because you'll get a chance to look at your own core values. I don't think we've written a philosophy since our undergraduate degrees, but it has you go back and address what are your core values as a leader. And the culture of the building always is something you want to keep a pulse on. And again, data, focus on results. So the difference between an instructional and an organizational leader. So instructional, we don't have to question that. We know that that's the teaching and learning. We're making sure all kids have an appropriate and free education. Unless you're in private school, then they pay for it. But looking at our curriculum, our instruction, what are our assessments, but just making sure we're optimizing our student learning, what's instructional practices, effective. We're always wanting to be effective. And we're going to do a deep dive into observations and feedback in our next class together. Organizational leadership. How are we being, how is our culture and climate? Are our staff and students feeling safe? Have we looked at our budget? These are some things to start wrapping your head around as you start doing your clinical practice. Those areas will be addressed during that. The 6 domains that you will look at are the data-driven focus, school improvement, the viable and guaranteed curriculum, continuous development of your teachers and staff, community of care and collaboration, core values, and then resource management. Everything should be evidence-based. That's the life we live. If it's not evidence, then if there's no evidence to support it, why are we doing it? All right, chapter 1 is all about domain 1, which is a data-driven focus on school improvement. When we start talking about school improvement, we are all about the data. If you've never looked at data, you need to start looking at data. If you're in a content area, and I know in high school, there are only 4 tests given, and that is going to be where you need to start. If you're a history teacher in middle school, you're not given a history exam, but that high school history teacher is leaning on you to have those students ready when they take the history exam in their 11th grade year. So just making sure that you're fully aware of the data, that is something all teachers need to be aware of. So you're going to ensure the appropriate use of data to develop critical goals. And these are your different elements. And these are the things that you develop as you're doing your domain assignments. You know what they mean, but you also develop them as you're writing. So looking at those 3 core elements, being able to analyze, interpret the data, being able to implement interventions, and then having supportive practices to help meet student achievement goals. Everything should be measurable. We can't go in and not have a measurable goal, because then what is our target? Will we ever meet the goal that we're looking into if we don't have an actual measurable goal? If I am going too fast, please tell me to slow down. You have questions about anything, please turn off, turn your microphone on and ask those questions. Data, the how and why. I'll let you all read through that. This is the why, and why do we do what we do with data? It always goes back to student achievement. Why do we have RTI or MTSS is what it is now? Why do we have those things? So that we can put interventions in place so that all kids get to the designated end goal. So just knowing the how and why. Most of you know that we live in a data-driven school environment. Developing goals, you all will do that with your SMART goals assignment. You will develop goals and you'll look at the who, the what, the when, the where, and the how, and determining what you need to do for those to make sure that kids are improving. So our SMART goals assignment, we're going to talk about just the specifics of that. You're going to have specific, measurable, attainable, results-oriented evidence, which is time-bound, our SMART part of that. And keep that in mind, because as an administrator, you have to turn in SMART goals every year to your supervisor, whether it's your assistant superintendent or your superintendent. So we do have the SMART goals assignment that we'll get into in just a minute. And as I said before, you'll break into your breakout rooms to just kind of get familiar with your group members. So the big picture of element 2 is just that progress monitoring piece, making sure as a leader, you're analyzing, you're collecting, analyzing, and organizing that data, and ensuring that the teachers are deliberate with their plan. A lot of times we get so much data, we don't know what data to use for what, what particular concern area, but you have to start narrowing that down. So these are the 3 levels of data analysis. Right now, this probably doesn't mean anything to you, but as you start looking at your SMART Goals project, this will become something you need to think about. And I'll already caution you about the level 3, the root cause. Please don't use COVID. Please do not put COVID down on any of your projects that you're turning in. We know COVID happened, but what is the root cause? Is it because the student was virtual and missed key standards? Is it because the kid didn't come to school because of sicknesses? And so we know that there are gaps in the learning. But when we look at a root cause, we need to go deeper than just that one thing of COVID. And I've said that to every trimester of students because that had become a thing. Thinking about the data that you're using, making sure we're using data that actually gives a clear picture of what the weaknesses and strengths are. So when you get with your team and you start talking about the data, like I said before, you're going to determine what needs to be done. And then you're going to look at those critical achievement goals, and then how will we monitor and what will we do to help fix those problem areas. So that element 3 of it is going back to what are our interventions? Are they specific enough for student growth? Does it narrow the achievement gap? Every year, you don't need to do the same thing because kids are different from year to year. So chapter 2, this is the viable and guaranteed curriculum. All kids are different, but they all should have a curriculum that meets their needs. So here are the elements for domain 2. If you are in a high school, but you don't know what are the different instructional practices within your building, I would tell you that that is something you need to become more familiar with. And I say that to high school because I know that y'all are more departmentalized than elementaries. So you only work with your history people, or you only work with the math department, you only work with the ELA department, and so forth. So as a administrator, you have to know what all those different departments are doing. Like, you are responsible for knowing what are our target goals, what are our curriculum, the curriculum that we're using, what is it that we're using as our assessments. So I would caution you not to stay in your bubble as you're doing your clinical practices, to venture out into the other department levels, sitting some of their department level meetings to understand the curriculum from that lens of an administrator. And I always key in on the element 4. The school leader ensures that each student has equal opportunity to learn the critical content of the curriculum. Opportunity. I already know if you have a SPED student who's performing 4 grades behind, they're not going to learn at the same rate as your students that are on grade level. But do they have the opportunity to at least get the material? So I always cue in on that, because a lot of times that's the one area. that people are like, well, they can't learn at the same pace as everyone else. We know that. That's why we give them an IEP. Curriculum is, and this is from Marzano, essential content to be addressed in specific courses at specific grade levels. We need to make sure we understand our standards. We have to know this is the end game. I tell my teachers at Mansdale Upper, this is the bare minimum. When they walk out of your classroom, the Mississippi State standards are the bare minimum. If you go above and beyond that, then you're a rock star. This is the bare minimum, you know, so just understanding that we are optimizing learning for all students and not teaching to the middle and not teaching to the low, but making sure we are differentiating our instruction that we reach all of our learners. No, why did that keep doing that? Viability of the curriculum. It can be taught in the instructional time available to teachers. How can the instructional time be maximized? Shift the focus from an emphasis of simply covering the content to an emphasis on depth of content. I think that was really addressed when we came out of COVID. And I don't know about your schools, but I know in our district, we had our core content standards and we had to go deeper with those and try to take a lot of the fluff out. But just making sure that we're understanding that we need to go deep with students. And as a leader, that's your role when you're conducting PLCs. And you have to make sure that instructional time is protected so teachers can teach the essential content. This is a hard concept for a lot of teachers, giving up those lessons that they've loved for many years. But when you come back and look at it again and you're like, oh, well, this takes up 3 weeks, but it only addresses 1 or 2 standards. We sometimes do have to give up things. And as a leader, it is your role to make sure you're having those conversations and those planning meetings to say, hey, I love this too, but we have this much content and this amount of time, and we may have to give up some fun stuff that we love just because we've done it for so long. Providing a clear vision. As the leader, you have to know what your vision for instruction is before you go in. You have to know what good teaching looks like. I say all the time, I couldn't teach Spanish, but I know if a teacher is actually providing instruction that kids are actually walking away from it with learning, because at the end of the day, it's the teaching, but it also is the learning. And we have to always know what does it look like for good teaching. And you'll get to do that with when you do your observation and feedback assignment. It won't be as in-depth as it's going to be when you do your practice, clinical practice, but it'll also give you just a lens to see from. I left that for you all to read it, because if you've never been in a school that actually does instructional rounds where the principal comes in and then you meet with them in a timely manner to get feedback, that is one of the most key elements as an instructional leader. If you've never been in a school that has done that, we're going to talk about that in our next class, but that is something that you need to just start wrapping your head around. Like, what does it look like to be an instructional leader who's always in classrooms, always meeting with teachers to provide feedback? Because I will tell you, that is the one way that you can improve teacher practices, is having those conversations. And the how. Oh, I got a typo. I thought I fixed that. I need to fix that. So living here, must get used to frequent in-class observation. Teachers should not be teaching in isolation anymore. Everything now should be a collaborative work effort. And sometimes administrators don't know what professional development teachers need. This is where you should be asking the questions. What is it that I need to do to support you? And making sure that you're providing that professional development to your teachers. Aligning curriculum to standards. We should not be teaching because we love a program. Programs are just that, programs. Standards are what we teach. So always making sure what we're using in the classroom is based off the standards we're teaching. I love a horizontal and vertical alignment meeting, knowing that what we're doing in third grade meets the needs of our fourth graders, and then it meets the needs of our fifth graders. And then horizontally across this grade band of fourth grade teachers, are we all teaching to meet the needs of all kids? Having those meetings so teachers can ask questions is so essential. Well, I taught, RI 4.1 and my kids are struggling. What did you do that was so different? Your scores look so much better than mine. Being able to create a space where teachers are comfortable and they're able to be vulnerable about test scores. I feel like a lot of times that teachers feel shamed when their test scores are not that great, instead of feeling empowered to come in and ask their fellow teachers, how did you teach this standard? What is it that you used, or your questioning stems, so that we can make sure that each of us is getting better. I always say to my teachers, iron sharpens iron. You don't go in and put your knives up if you're trying to cut a steak. You walk in and ask the question so that when you walk in your classroom, you are a sharper teacher based off of the other teachers in your grade band. Like, we need to be at a place in our lives now as educators that we can ask questions about teaching and learning and not feel guarded. So just making sure as an instructional leader, you remember that. Formative assessments. This has always been my soapbox in high school. And I say that because I've had 2 kids to go through high school and graduate. When I look in their, active parent for us. And I'm like, man, you only had 2 minor grades, but you have like 5 major grades. Who's checking formatively to see if you're on your way to where you need to be? And that has always been a soapbox. And as a leader of an elementary school, we put in parameters of, if you're going to give a summative, you need to have at least 3 checkpoints before you get there. They don't have to all look the same in classrooms, but we need to talk about formative assessments so that we are not shocking kids when we get to the unit assessment. And I don't know about you all, but PLCs sometimes are a pain, because you're giving up time, but they're so valuable in that this is the time you come together and you get to talk about teaching and learning with your fellow teachers in a space, like I said, that should be a place where you can talk about assessments. Let's think about, what are we doing? How are we teaching? And what does that look like? Viability of the curriculum. We all know about the levels of complexity: analysis, comparing and contrasting, generating hypothesis, problem solving. If we're not putting these things in, if our teachers are not putting these things in, how rigorous is our curriculum? And as a leader, you need to know, what are your non-negotiables? When we're talking about standards and we're talking about teaching and learning, what are your non-negotiables? I've always said, and I love the last bullet point, that textbooks are a resource. They don't drive the curriculum. They don't drive instruction. How can we use the textbook as a resource, but making sure we're teaching the standards? I'm going to say again, guys, I'm moving through this swiftly because, again, I'm trying to value your time. But if you have questions, please don't hesitate to stop and ask them. Having a school culture of high expectations for all is essential. So this scenario right here happens a lot. And it's one of those things, there are only so many minutes in a day, but does it help Jake to miss math class to get a reading intervention? It does not, because if he's missing math class, he's already weak in reading. What's going to happen to math? He's going to eventually become weak in math. So you have to be under, that leader who can come in and problem solve. So setting that clear expectation that we're not going to rob one subject area to improve another subject area. So that is so important. So this is our speed date activity. How does a leader provide a clear vision for how instruction should be addressed in the school? So instead of us breaking out and doing this as rotations, again, I always say this, you know, everybody has a pet peeve. My pet peeve is people robbing my time because you can't get time back, and I wake up early enough. So that's the only other way to get more time is to stay awake. I'm not a night person, or wake up earlier. So for our time's sake, what I'm going to ask is that if you would unmute to answer these questions, we can keep rolling. If we're not going to openly share, then I guess we'll have to do the actual speed date activity as an activity. So anyone want to volunteer? How does a leader provide a clear vision for how instruction should be addressed in the school?
So this is Sean.
Hi, Sean.
Hey, so I think it's not just one thing, it's a bevy of things. Like, so it has to be like front of talk, like when you're talking to teachers, the vision of instruction always has to kind of be expressed in some manner. There should be a document which addresses what is the vision for instruction, so there's no disparity. It has to be expressed in teacher evaluations. Just kind of shows up in all the different spaces that the leader participates in.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to share?
I will, Krista. One of the ways that our administration does a really good job of this at Petal at the middle school is through our observation response. Ours is through, it's a part of school status that it's called Teach Boost, that as they're observing, they're taking notes in Teach Boost, and we automatically get that email as soon as they walk out of our room, and then they ask a question and we respond back and forth. But they give clear confirmation of things that we're doing in our classroom that they are looking for or what's expected. And then they will give suggestions on how that instruction could have looked different, or even ask questions for us to give reasoning behind why our instruction looks the way it does. So they give us a chance, because they see a snippet, they give us a chance to kind of give our whole lesson to them, to kind of explain what we're doing, but through, like Sean was just saying, through immediate feedback on what's actually happening in our personal classrooms.
Thank you, Krista. So now, what is the danger of teachers being isolated from other teachers? Someone else comment on that one for us?
I'll answer this. From teaching special ed for the past so many years and working with whole teams of teachers, when teachers are isolated, they're not necessarily teaching at the same rigor level and the same content all the time. And I thought the example in the book, I can't remember if it went along with this, but when I was talking about the 3 triplets going to school, sometimes I found this working in different schools, if the teachers weren't all working together and I had students in all different classes, it was a challenge making sure that my students were each receiving the same level of instruction. And so when teachers are isolated and they're not working together and they're not communicating in teams, it's really hard for a school to have I think it's the guaranteed curriculum, where they're teaching at the same rigor, they're teaching the essential standards. So working together is just so important.
Yeah, I can add on to that with the exact scenario, because when I was taught first grade, I had a set of twins, and they were split between my class and another teacher's class. And we did not work super well together. It was nothing personally. It was just, she was a very seasoned teacher, close to retirement and I was brand new. And I actually ended up getting those same kids in 4th grade this year that we just finished. And mom told me, she was like, we never did that again. We never separated them in 2nd or 3rd. We just wanted to make sure they were together. So it's just really important for situations like that, especially for the teachers to all be working together.
I want to add on to rotation too. I work at an elementary level, and the danger of isolating teachers from other teachers is the lack of integrating standards. Like with me being a science person, sometimes we, depending on the standard, we have to meet with the math teachers. Just like with ELA and social studies, they have to work together to build off each other. So that's one of the main things in elementary is that when you are isolated, you're kind of hurting the kids by not working together to try to put those subjects together. So that's one thing.
I would agree with everything you guys said because, yeah, it's about the kids. It's about making sure we are providing that viable curriculum, and it should look the same. If I have twins and I have one in your class and one in the other class, when they come home, they should be doing like things, very similar things. And common assessments is what is going to make sure they do that. Because if I love backwards design. That's another platform that I love. If we're backwards designing from the assessment down, then when we get there, the roadmap should be clear. I tell teachers, I don't want you to be cookie cutter. I don't have a problem with you going in your room and doing it differently. But the end goal is the end goal for all kids. So that leads to rotation 3. What are non-negotiable standards and how are they determined?
I'll chime in on this. I love this question because from what I understand and from what I read, it's understood that as teachers, we have so many standards to cover and so little time. And I think one of the main struggles as teachers is that we feel like we never have enough time to teach all the standards and to really go in depth. And so we find ourselves just trying to cover content just to cover it all. And from what I understand, the non-negotiable standards are those ones that you determine from looking at state test blueprints, from looking at those or identifying those 21st century college career readiness skills that go from grade level to grade level to grade level. And you're identifying those really critical skills that students really struggle with that are extremely important for them to master. And so identifying those and making sure that these standards will be covered and not just covered, but you're going to go in depth with them. And all of the other standards, it's not that they're not important, but we can spend a little bit less time on those, but we're going to make sure that we really hit these specific standards really hard.
And piggybacking off of what you just said, this past school term, my kids, 5th grade ELA, my kids will always outscore the other schools in our district, but they fell short on the reading literacy standard, the standard RL. So I had to just concentrate. I didn't set aside the other ones, but I focused more on the ones that they were lacking in to get them to understand. I always incorporate my life. They always say, Ms. Bartley, tell us another story. And I'm like, I would be like, what story are you talking about? But they love when I incorporate real life into what we're learning for those different standards. And it made it more easy for them to understand it, to incorporate their life. And once they got a hold to, okay, I can put my life with this, then they were able to understand. So now I'm just waiting on the state results to come back to see how they did on those. So yeah, just piggybacking off of what you just said, standards that they're lacking in, to focus a little more on those.
And I would like to add this too, from a SPED perspective. I have only worked in SPED for 2 years. Well, really 3 if you count the psychometry, but I was in the classroom for 2. And one of the things that I noticed is I would get the IEP, and
it would be something, they would have a goal that it was lined up with the standard, but it wasn't, like y'all say, it wasn't one of those heavy hitters on the state test. So they might have problems with some measurement. I taught 4th and 5th grade math. So they might have some issues with some measurement or some type of geometry, but if y'all have taught that, y'all know that there's minimal questions on that state test about that. So they also may really, really, really struggle with place value. And that's one of those things, if you struggle with place value, you're gonna miss a ton of questions. So it's important to make sure that those IEPs are also lining up with your more important non-negotiable standards.
I love the discussions around these non-negotiable standards. And it is important that as veteran teachers, you let your newbies know the non-negotiables. Because what I found this year is that a lot of times looking at data, we go into those data meetings and we have a full-on conversation about these are the standards that the 3rd graders were weak. And I taught 3rd through 5th. I talk about 3rd through 5th grade students because my school is in 3 through 5. And we had to stop what we were doing and recognize the new teachers, new to the profession teachers, not understanding that why are we looking at 3rd grade data for 4th grade kids when we first get back to school? Because we need to know where they're weak coming in. So making sure that you all, when you are in your meetings, think about your new people and having those conversations and bringing them on board so that they understand what are non-negotiable standards. Let's move on to rotation 4. Why is it important that essential standards are taught? Well, y'all have actually answered that. So we're done with these. Does anyone want to chime in on rotation 4 that has a different perspective?
I wanted to actually chime in on, go back to rotation 2, if that's okay.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Okay. And I was just thinking about the dangers of teachers being isolated. And I'm originally from Georgia. This is my 4th year being in the state of Mississippi, working as a teacher. And even though I have several years of experience as a teacher, the way that we look at education in Georgia is totally different from the way we look at education here in Mississippi. And it's taken me, I finally arrived, but it's taken me 4 years to finally understand what I mean by that. And when we talk about the accountability model, I teach English too. So of course that's a state tested area. So one of the dangers based on my personal experience of being isolated, I worked along two young, fresh teachers. They were young in age, younger than me, but they had one had 6 years experience and one had about 4 years of experience. But they were awesome teachers and they knew they were awesome. So they were close personally. And it was as if I was on an island by myself because they were accustomed to working together. And when we talk about climate and culture, the danger of that for me was I felt alone. And when it was time to present the data based on the 3 and 6 week assessment and the 9-week benchmark, their results were way better than mine. And I found that it wasn't that I was less effective. It's just that there was a lack of collaboration. No, even when I would ask, what are some things that you're doing with, let's say, standard RI 10.1 citing evidence, it would be a very surface level response. And I would usually just kind of go back to my island because I didn't feel that they truly understood the collaborative model. And they were busy doing the work of teaching students, but not the actual essence of collaboration. So long story short, when we think about morale building and developing a culture, you have to think about your team. And you have to think about building on the strengths and weaknesses, and you have to take those professional learning communities very serious. Those discussions have to be rich because the end goal is we want to be as effective as we can be to increase the student achievement, and so little things as far as being willing to step out of your comfort zone, or pull that person that feels isolated off of that island is very, very important. And I believe retaining teachers, because if it's too big of an issue, teachers may leave where they don't feel the culture of unity. They may leave just because of that. So to me, it's a very dangerous situation because it can impact so many areas of a building if that collaboration is not supported or evaluated or examined by administrators to ensure that all teachers feel like they have something to provide to their area of expertise.
I'm so glad you pulled that out, Brandy, because a lot of times administrators don't even see that part, and that's why when I think about that collaboration part of, your new teachers, and not new to the profession, but new to a building. When we do our interviews on our rubric, it says would fit in well with the culture. And we added that to our rubric basically for that reason, because if you're hiring for a 12th grade teacher, what are those teachers like? Are they welcoming? Because we don't like to say people are not welcoming, but cliquish. We don't like to use those types of terms, but they do happen still in education. They're little cliques or little pods of people. How are we letting new people in? And your point about using PLCs and being very intentional about the planning, because as an assistant principal, my principal and I have always gone into even their weekly planning meetings when they're doing the work. What's your role in this? Like, everybody needs to have a job. And that way everyone feels invested in having those discussions. So thank you for putting that fresh on my heart, because coming in as the new lead of the building, now I'm gonna be consciously paying attention to that. So thank you so much for that. All right, is there, do we have anyone else that needs to share before moving on?
I wanted to talk about rotation 4. A reason why it's important is because I know we can say 3 through 12, they have to take tests. So most of the time, out of the time, those essential standards are on the test that they're taking. So if the essential standards are not taught, the students will not be successful on the test. So you must make sure that you're hitting those essential standards all the time, and just not on, because we use a pacing guide, just not on the pacing guide. You must make sure that you're spiraling back to those essential standards and that they're being covered consistently and so that they can be successful on the end goal. Because like I teach 3rd grade, and in Mississippi, the end goal in 3rd grade is to get them past the GATE test. So if I'm not, and I found that my kids struggle with informational standards. Now I found a way around it, and I have a lot of struggling readers this year. So I found a way to get them to connect the informational standards. And when I got my kids that fell back, I saw that they didn't do as bad in informational text as they did all year. When they got on the test, they took some of those strategies and stuff into hand. So you have to really take your time and dig in those standards and find ways that so the kids can be successful, because if they're not being taught, they will not be successful and they will not meet the end goal, which is to pass these assessments.
Bless your heart for 3rd grade. Yes, our 3rd grade teachers are the most stressed out every year. And we don't write the narrative of them coming to us because they're in a whole nother building. So we get what we get, and we can't throw a fit. We hit the ground. Right. You hit the ground running. And we've had parents who don't understand why there's such a hard shift when they leave the building for 2nd grade. And it's like, oh my gosh, y'all are expecting them to be da-da-da-da-da. Well, we've gotten to a point now where we've had conferences and had to show this is what they have to be able to do at the end of the year. It's not reading a happy story anymore. It's now reading, a 2-page document of the solar system. They could care less, and trying to have those conversations. So yes, it is a difference, but making sure that every grade band is connected vertically to the one before is essential, because those essential standards build upon each other. Thank y'all for sharing. I don't want to take this away from anyone, but again, I am going to be a good steward of your time. And so we're going to continue, just because that's the end of our slideshow. But just because I do want to make sure you all have a chance to get in your breakout rooms and be able to exchange information. If you have not, I know the cohorts start at different times, and I may be off of when this one started. Is this the beginning for some of you? If this is the beginning for some of you, and I will say this to y'all because when I went through William Carey, I only did my doctoral degree through William Carey. But the one thing that was such a game changer for our cohort was starting our group me. It was the best thing, because if I forgot something was due, somebody would shoot it out in the group me, and I'm like, thank you, I forgot about that, like paperwork that needed to be in or document that needed to be in. So I would tell all of you that are starting this cohort, y'all need to get together and do a remind, a group me, or whatever method that y'all want to use to stay in constant contact with each other, because these people are going to be vital to you throughout this process, because you're going to take the same courses together. That's just free information. Use it if you need to or not. But what I'm going to do, I printed the list. I have to update your groups in the actual Canvas module of the group setting. But the one that's in the module for the week, those are correct. So Adrian Kishman, am I pronouncing that correctly? No one said anything. She may not be on. So I'm going to break you all out into those groups. So give me just a minute, because I'm having to put them in manually.
My first name is Haley. I just realized I put Keaton on the screen. I never go by Haley, so it was just habit.
It's okay. Okay. But I may mess that up too. I tell the
That's
children
okay.
at school, I will mess up a name worse than anyone else. I'm just pitiful with that part of life. I'm working on it though. It's a 15-step process. Okay, Adrian, what are you listed in the chat? I mean, in the Zoom call as? You're on, not on. Okay, this is going to be more difficult than I thought. Sharon's here. And Lavasha Sharp is here. Kishman, is that, are you going by something else? Adrian, I'm not seeing that name either. Okay, we may have to do something different if their name's left over. Let's just do it that way. Rose Mary, okay. Jamal is here. Jasmine, is that Habershon? Y'all unmute yourselves and talk. If you're dropping it in the chat, I can't do both boxes at the same time. I'm just gonna be honest with you.
Habershon.
That is Jasmine, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then Haley, you're listed as what on this?
Keaton.
Keaton, okay, thank
Yes.
you. Thank you.
Now, this is Sharon. When I'm on my home computer, it's Sharon Gray, but on my phone, it would be Sharon Bartley. That's what I go by. My name was changed back.
Okay. So, okay, I see what you're saying. I have two Sharons on here, so I may actually have y'all in the wrong room.
Well, that's me, because my computer keep going out for some reason, and I have to go back to the phone.
Okay. Well, I am getting it done, y'all. It's a process. I promise you, it is a process. Okay. Okay. Sean, I have your name misspelled in one of these. I'm gonna fix that. Marta, is it different on here? Or maybe she had to leave. I know some.
Yeah, she posted in her chat she had to leave for her sister's wedding.
Right. And Kay Robinson, that's Key. Is that Kiba?
Yes.
I got it. All right, I'm almost there, y'all. I promise. It takes longer than it should, but I'm almost there. Okay, Leanne, I see you. Crystal. Okay, the Crystal in the specialist group. Which Crystal are you, White or Mosley?
Mosley.
Okay, there we go. That's how I can get to the bottom of that. And then Jenny, are you listed as something else?
Yes, Brianne.
And thank you. And then Brandy is here. Okay, so now Christy Mason. Are you in the specialist group?
Yes.
Okay. I gotta add you to a group. Give me a second here. And then Tiara Peterson, I see you here.
Yes.
Okay, and then Christy Mason is the specialist group. And then these may all be wrong and I may have to fix them later because some people are not showing to be in any groups. See, Crystal White, Christy Welford, and Sharon Gray. Are y'all the group of master's program?
I am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, who is that? Crystal White?
Crystal White.
Okay, what
Crystal
about?
Welford is also.
Okay, and then Sharon Gray.
I'm in specialist.
You're in the specialist. Okay, I
Yes,
have.
ma'am.
So there's, okay, well, I'm gonna add that room. Sharon Gray, you are in the specialist program, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, let me put you in another group. Give me a second. Okay, now I'm gonna put you all in. Okay, now we should have everybody in a room that should be in a room. And if it's wrong, y'all can blame me for it. I mess up all the time. I'm okay with it. Okay, so I'm gonna send you out to the breakout rooms. I'm gonna give you 10 minutes in the breakout room, okay? And this is just to just get information from each other if you don't already have it, so that you all can work together on the group project, okay? I'm gonna give you 8 minutes because we only have 10 before 10. And then I'll go over the data paperwork that you have to fill out, okay? All right, I am sending you out now. John, you did not go out to a group. Let's see what happened.
This is Angeline Delancey. My computer's acting a little slow, so I'm not sure if I'm in the group or I'm stuck somewhere.
I don't know. Let's see. You should be in group 4, so you were assigned to a group. Let's see. Everyone's been assigned to something. Sharon Bardley, can you hear me?
Dr. Cockrell.
Yes, ma'am. Why are you out of your room?
I am in a room alone. Nobody showed up. So I came
Oh.
back to see if I should be somewhere
Let me see what happened. Let me see
in
if
room one.
you were in room 1.
Yes.
Is
And
she-
I think Sharon Bartley, she has 2 screens up. She said she had a phone up and a computer. So she
That-
had 2 screens up.
She is in the wrong room then, and I don't see her but that one time. And I'm trying to
Okay.
figure out what was her name on the other screen then.
It was Sharon something. Well, there she is.
Okay. I cannot hear anything, Miss Bardley. Okay, I'm gonna send both of you out of room 1, okay?
Okay. Okay.
It's saying y'all are both in room 1, but you're not in room 1 anymore. And I don't know why.
Okay, I'm going now.
All right, Sharon, can you go to room 1? I will be closing the breakout rooms in about 2 minutes.
Recording in progress. 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 Recording in progress.
Okay, so we're gonna wrap up the end just by looking at what the SMART goals assignment is.
Dr. Cockrell, may I interrupt you just 1 second? I'm sorry.
Of course.
I ended up in group one with just one other person, but she's in another group. So it's like I'm solo. So can you look at that? I would love to be in a group with other people.
So you were in the group with Sharon Gray, is that right?
Yes, but she was in another group as well.
And I was in a different group as well, Dr. Cochrane. I was in the group with Brandy and Brianne, which was group 6, but I was listening in group 5 with Leah, Leanne and Tierra. But I mean, I'm fine in the group I'm in, unless you, I mean.
No, you can stay in that
stay
group.
Okay, stay in that group with Brianne and Brandy. Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
yes.
Thank you.
And Lavisha.
Yes, Lavisha.
Lavisha, you should have Adrian Keishman, I'm pronouncing that wrong, in that group with you.
Adrian and Keishman are not on, so I don't know. So yeah, it's just me so far.
Okay, well, I will send a message to those two and let them know to get with you. And y'all can do that via email. Yes, ma'am.
Cockrell, you had me with Lavisha, but then also you had me with Sean and Angeline. I'm Sharon Bartley Gray. So which group do you want me to stay with?
There are 3 Sharons in this class, and I made the fatal error of not putting initials by your last names when I started this process. So I'm okay with, because y'all have already connected, if y'all stay in the group together, if that is okay with y'all. I'm not gonna make I mean, for me, the groups are fine as long as you're with people you can work with.
Okay, so Sean and Angeline. Okay.
Okay.
Excuse me, Dr. Cockrell.
Yes, ma'am.
I was just letting you know about my group. I'm fine with my group, but originally I was supposed to be with Jamal and Jenny. And this time I'm with Destin and also with let me see the name. And I'm also with Derek.
Okay. Now, again, with the groups, I may have just, when I was hitting them for your group setups, and that's why I like doing the breakout rooms prior to this day. If you can work with them, you're fine. Here's the thing, like I said, when we started, as long as when you turn in your assignment and you're with the group, I'm okay with it. It's just the fact that we do a group assignment. Keep it a group. So let me do this. Let me send out an email and I will list all the groups, and it may not be the same as what it was before. I see a lot of people are putting their cell phone numbers in the chat. So I don't know who's setting up the group me. I didn't read back that far. But give me to the end of tomorrow and I'll send y'all an email with all the groups listed, first and last names, okay?
I went ahead and set up a group me for the specialists and doctorate people, because I think, aren't the master's program a little bit different?
Yes.
But that's what, if you want to send your number in the chat, I'm trying to add people at the same time.
Thank you so much for doing that, Keaton. I'm telling you, it's very valuable. Y'all may not know it today, but it is a valuable thing to have people reminding and sending out information. So you worked with different people today. What I will do is I'm going to regroup everybody and I'll send that out. And then you'll link up with your group via an email, okay? Because this was a bust. It did not work out the way I intended. And this is the first time I've had a bust on this part of the lesson. So with that being said, I'll send another list out. I'm going to update it and put the right last names with the right people, okay? So don't do anything with your group assignment today. Wait until Monday, okay? Now, I'm going to share my screen just so that we can go through this last little bit, because this is where the questions normally come from. Which data should we use? Whose data should we use? I never assign the data. This is a sample data set that I'm showing you because I want you to understand. I know that we have all different testing instruments. Some schools use iReady. Some schools use MVP. Some schools use CASE. Some schools use, I'm forgetting the other one, is L something, but it's just different sets of data. Say again?
I think we use ELS this year.
ELS, that's the one I was thinking about. What I'm going to say to you is use within your group who can come up with the data that everyone can use. Y'all decide that as a group. But now if you're at a school and everybody's data is 60% and higher, that's not the best data to use because you're grasping for what is a problem area. And that does happen. I've had that happen because I got an email from one that said, we're in like 80%. Can I use that? Yeah, you can, but it's going to be harder to find a root cause, is what I always say. So if you see this sample set of data, this is actually from MAP. It's third grade ELA data from MAP. I like to put the extra A in there so y'all can laugh later. And if you notice, there are problem areas in the 40%, 37%. But if you keep looking at it, it goes downhill. As we get to RI 3.2, we are at 18.75. RI 3.1, we're at 12.5. Hard passages and it's science text, right? DOK level 2 here and here, but it's a DOK level 2 and these kids are performing that low. This is a nice set of data to talk about weaknesses and to come up with things you can do to assist students that need help. Would I use this one? No, because it's 93% proficiency. I'm not going to look at that. We don't need to do anything there. Pull 2 or 3 kids. But this is reteachable data. This is an area where we know some reteaching needs to happen. So that's what I would tell you all. Whatever data you use, make sure we're looking at an area of weakness that we can actually discuss, if that makes sense. Let's see, I have another. Okay, and then the last thing I want to share with you all. All right, is this part. So when you do your template, and this is listed, it's going to be in your module when you download this from the module. Don't pay attention to all my errors. Grammarly will critique everything. If you look at this, your test name, you're going to put whatever test data you're using, what grade level it is, what subject area it is. List at least 2 areas of weaknesses. That goes back to my first point. Don't pick something that you can't really expound upon, because as you work through this document, you're adding layers to it. So you want to make sure you're picking something you can actually add the different things to. So this is pretty much your first assignment, is filling out this box. Then you'll walk into the next phase of it when you talk about and you give different things that you can add to it. What are we going to use to work on our weaknesses? What are some strategies and different things to do? What I will ask you to do is to clean the document up before you have had people to leave everything on here just as it is and just put in these 3 boxes. Leave all this at the bottom and I'm like, ooh, this is not a cleaned up document. After you download it, clean it up, put your group names on it, and send me a clean document of just what you want graded at that time, okay? And all documents should look the same. Keep that in mind as well. Everyone in that group should be turning in the exact same document. I always caution there because I don't want you to turn it in and then I'm like, wait, you're not doing what the other people have done. And you're like, yes, I did, but mine just looks different. I caution you there just to say, make sure we're turning in the same document so that when I'm looking at it, and I look at all 3 or 4 people at one time so that I'm grading everybody on the same document. That's just part of it. Let me think. It was one other thing I needed to share with y'all. When you turn in the second phase of that document, you're going to list the 2 strategies. Just stay consistent. The rubrics are on your in the Canvas module if you scroll all the way up. I'm really big about a rubric. So if it's on the rubric, please try to include that in your assignment. And that's for all assignments. And if I say to you that it doesn't need to be in first person, when I open up your domains assignments, I don't want to see I, me. That's not first person. And I know someone in here is working on a dissertation and oh, I'm sorry, I got my little lens thing closed. If you're working on a dissertation, you are always out of that document. It is a third person document. And I will tell you, as an administrator, as the school leader, these are great sentence starters. Okay, if it's a reflection, if you are adding a part in there that is a reflection, new paragraph, and you go to first person, that is fine. Okay, so these are just things that I do count off for, and I don't want you to be shocked. If it's already turned in, of course, I'm not going to count off for it because we've already turned that in prior to the meeting. This class. Okay, let me go through, make sure everything you turn in should have a cover sheet on it. Yes, and your domains projects, your activities, there is a culminating assignment where you're going to take all of those different 6 domains and you're going to drop them in a PowerPoint later. And then that is going to also be your TK20 assignment. Is how well do you understand the 6 domains? That's why I keep saying, if you don't have the book, get the book. If you are not reading the book, read the book. Because I will look closely at that to make sure that it is all in line. I know you all have orientation this afternoon at 11. I normally try to get on there with you all, but I do have something else this afternoon that will prevent me from being on that call. Are there any questions that you need answered? And I'm going to say again, your question may be the question someone else has on their heart, but may be afraid to ask. No questions. Okay. We're about 10 minutes over in time because I said 8 to 10, but we got started late. Last thing, my points I leave with you. If there's an emergency, you can't get something in, email me prior to, not after. If it's a situation where there's an emergency and you can't help but email me after, that is fine. I understand life happens. And at this point in life happens really quickly. If you're going to miss a virtual class, you do need to let me know of that. I can't help that you're going to miss points for that. That is a William Carey policy. If you turn in an assignment the day after, it is considered an absence from the class. That is a William Carey policy. Regardless if you email me or not, I have to count that as an absence, okay? If you're not on a virtual call, that counts as a week's absence. So like for this whole week, the people who were not on, I'm not saying left early, but they didn't sign on, that I have to count you absent for all those days. And I hate having to do that, but again, that's a policy that I cannot just not do. So just be cognizant of those things. I would say don't wait until Sunday to start your assignments if you have multiple classes, because you're not going to get them all done in a manner that is, quality. If you are doing an assignment, I'm going to tell you, please reread it. I am not a grammar police. I try not to be the grammar police, but this is graduate level, guys. You got to do quality assignments that are of graduate level. I pay for Grammarly because I send out a lot of emails, and the one thing I hate to happen is to send out something that is not of good quality. At this level, you all know that at this level, your subjects and verbs have to match. It just is, you know. So I caution you all on that. Reread it. Let somebody else read it, because you're gonna get upset with me when your paper is highlighted and I tear it up. And I will do that. And I'm sorry. I'm gonna apologize ahead of time. And that's why I'm telling you to read over it, proof it before you send it in, because this is graduate level. Let me think. Don't forget you have to sign on for your orientation. If you're having issues with finding assignments in the module, I am in 2 different classes with the masters and specialists, and I will open something up in the master's course and forget to go in and do the specialist. You do not hurt my feelings if you shoot me an email and say, hey, I can't find this, because I'm doing this class as an adjunct professor, but I'm also doing another job as a school principal. Just like y'all are in school doing this, but you're also in a job every day. So the same grace that you give me, I will provide back to you. Okay. That is all I have for you. I want you all to have a fabulous weekend. Get out, enjoy the sunlight, and do something fun, because guess what? School is going to be there when you come back in. Okay. Enjoy your day. And if you need me or anything, please know I am an email away. Thank you all for participating.
Thank you.
Have a good day, y'all.
Yes, please have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.